smallmouth fishing, mouth of the Juniata, right above Harrisburg, near the Susquehanna. Stay tuned, it's going to be a good one.
Delaware Valley Outdoors, your best source for fishing information on TV, radio, and the internet.
Fishing with Steve King from Real Bass Adventures. Steve, it's springtime out here. What do we expect today?
Well, the water's still a little bit cold. We're fishing spinnerbaits now. When the sun gets up a little bit higher, we're going to be switching over to tubes. We should be catching some nice smallies today. There's a possibility that we're going to catch some walleye, especially the areas that we're fishing. And we're going to go and visit a muskie hole that I know about, and hopefully there will be a muskie there for us.
Yeah, most people really don't. I mean, Susquehanna, the smallmouths are what everybody thinks about as far as that goes. But this place carries a lot of muskies too, right?
Oh yes, muskie. I've heard of some pike. I haven't caught any pike myself. There are pickerel here, walleye, and of course smallmouth.
Steve, we're actually at the mouth of the Juniata River where it comes into the Susquehanna, am I correct?
Yes, yes. This is the confluence of the two rivers right below us. And,
I mean, it's really, I mean, I like it here. It's pretty. I think it's just, you know, when you look down the river there and whatnot, it's just gorgeous. How far are we above Harrisburg?
We're about 15 miles above Harrisburg on the Susquehanna River.
Mm-hmm. Oh, boy, that felt like a hit. Now, the Juniata also has its flow concerns, am I correct, as far as the height of the water, right?
Yeah, this, I go by the cubic foot flow rather than flood stage. If you call to get the flood stage in Harrisburg, that doesn't tell you how much water is coming over these ledges up here. This whole general area right around here, this is where what most people consider Duncannon. I draw the line at about a flow of about 20,000 cubic feet per second. Mm-hmm. I have been on the river when it's lower than that, but it's really not safe. You can hit a lot of rocks. If you don't know the river well, stay off the water.
And an experienced guide like yourself still hits rocks.
Oh yeah. I like to tell people I know every single rock in this river because I've hit them all.
That's true. One of the things that you really do want to be sure of, call ahead to somebody like yourself, or go to our website, Delaware Valley Outdoors, and you can link up to here and find the flow, because it's very, very important. Of course, you have the jet boat here,
yes,
which makes it a lot easier. But you know, guys can bring their small motors up here too and fish a little bit, but they got to be obviously careful. Now, in the summertime, it's obviously
oh, it gets way too low here.
Yeah, way too low.
Yeah, we have a flow today of about 29,000.
So we're doing pretty good then.
Yeah.
And the mouth here, you said it's like a series of steps or ledges?
Yeah, you can see the ledges right here beneath the boat. It's running on an angle. There's about a dozen of them. It works its way all the way down right to the mouth of the Susquehanna right there.
And the smallmouth just come up here and sit on these ledges?
Yep.
Just wait for our spinnerbait to go by?
Well, that's the general idea.
Yeah. And they really, it's amazing how close, I mean, how these ledges come right up to the surface almost. You really have to work your way around some of them.
Yes, you have to watch where you're going.
Now we're throwing, right now we're throwing a spinnerbait here, and you want to work it so it goes over the ledge and drops down, or how would you really work your bait?
I generally like a heavier spinnerbait. These are half-ounce spinnerbaits. I like them to run right close to the bottom. I want them to bump the rocks. That's usually when the fish will pick them up, when they bump the rocks. There you go. Looks like a nice one.
Nice little fish. Come here, fishy. There we go. Now, do we call this a Juniata smallmouth or a Susquehanna smallmouth?
I think you'll go either way. I mean, we're only about 200 yards off the Susquehanna right here.
There we go. Yeah, nice little fish.
Yeah, little buck bass.
Yeah. Love the color of these fish.
Oh, yeah.
I always love them. Now, do you find that they get darker as the weeds come up, or?
I think it all depends on what they're hanging out in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fish that are in the rocks, when the water is clear, they'll be real dark. But fish that are hanging out around the grass, they'll be a lighter color. If the grass is green, their stripes will be a lot more pronounced. It's all just part of their camouflage.
Yeah, just that they match whatever they're sitting in.
Yeah, yeah. But what we have up here, where these weeds are on the bank, during the summer, this is a grass bed. There's no grass on it right now, but the weed ball of the bed holds the bottom together. The current of the river digs the bottom out around it. The roots are there all year round. It forms a drop off, and a lot of times the fish will lay right there in that drop.
So it scoops it out, so they go down into there. Is that the case?
Yeah, yeah.
So each time you see one of those, you should probably pay attention to fishing.
Yes. Well, this time of year, if you don't know where the grass beds are, they're hard to find. Because, well, right now, the river's a little bit behind developmentally because we had such a cold March, and the grass isn't really emerging yet.
Yeah, and well, that's key on this river, right?
Yeah.
Find the grass, you'll find the bass.
Yep, that's right. There's always bass in the grass.
We had an opportunity to move to the mouth of Sherman's Creek and see if we can catch some more smallies.
Bob, a lot of times when it gets windy out on the main river, the mountains here funnel the wind down onto the water, and it makes it unfishable on the main river. I'll run up into these tributaries. This is Sherman's Creek. This creek maintains a good water depth about a quarter mile up. The bass will move up in here to spawn. Right now I'm hoping to get some of the transitioning fish right here in the mouth, the pre-spawn.
Now, how about water temperature here too? Will it stay a little warmer or cooler or what?
Well, actually the water temperature in here is about 1 degree cooler than the main river. It's because of the rains we've had this past weekend.
I know when the water does even come up out there too, in the wind, high water, you can sneak back up into these creeks and do some awesome fishing.
Oh yeah.
It drives the fish back up in here, right?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. A lot of times a muskie will come up in here, especially right here in between the railroad bridge and the highway bridge. This pool right here, I've caught a lot of muskie in here. There's a log jam up against the railroad bridge there. They'll hide down in those sticks. A lot of times I like to bring the boat up in behind log jams like this. This forms a good holding area for the fish. Breaks the current for them. We got a lot of good chunk rock in here, a lot of structure and cover.
And they'll lay right up into those trees. So,
oh yeah.
Like I say, don't be afraid to really throw your bait up in there. A lot of guys are worried about that. Oh, I'm going to lose my tube or my crankbait or something like that. But that's where the fish are. So you really got to put your bait.
I tell people all the time, if you're not getting hung up, you're not bass fishing.
That's right.
Because that's where the bass are.
You got to keep your bait in contact with that bottom, because well, you're using the little -1.
Yeah.
And I'm throwing a tube now, and again, the fish are going to be looking for that bait to be bouncing off the rocks, and or off a tree limb or something like that, like a prey fish would come out and get it.
See, Bob, now that we've brought the boat up into the hole here behind the log jam that we've been fishing, you can see how the water depth has really increased. Where we were sitting right back there, the boat was in less than 2 feet of water. These deep holes like this is what will hold the fish.
Yeah, so you get that log jam that creates that turbulent under there that digs a hole.
Right. And
it drops down into, say, like 4 feet. We almost got 4 feet there.
Right.
So that those fish will just come off of those flats while they're feeding, and then come back in here and rest. So, and that's one thing I tell people when they go on a new body of water, to get a guide for one day.
Oh yeah.
It is well worth it to do that, because the guide will help you learn the spots, learn how to transition through the water a lot of times. And like you said, you learned a lot about this river by knocking hunks off your boat.
That's right.
It's well worth it to pay a guide for one day, and you'll save a prop, a lower end, and a whole lot of trouble.
That's right. Well, and you'll save yourself the time of fishing unproductive water. I've already fished the unproductive water. I know where not to fish.
That's right.
Bob, I've switched over to a baby 1 minus here. We're coming up on some shallow chunk rock underneath this bridge. You can see there's some deeper water right around the bridge pilings here. They'll lay in this kind of stuff. There's a good one.
There you go.
Right in the trolling motor, actually. Come on out of there. Come on out of there, fish. There he is.
Steve, what you mentioned about these fish changing behaviors all the time, you got to keep searching with different baits.
Yep, just about every morning. You got to figure out what pattern they want today.
And so you switched over to a little baby -1 there?
Yep, and in a natural shad pattern.
Uh-huh. And the reason, obviously, is we shallow divers here. We don't have much.
No, we're sitting in less than 2 feet of water right now.
So you're just coming across those rocks and
just bumping the rocks.
Bumping
Yeah, these are all probably pre-spawn fish. They're up in here looking for places to bed. I understand from the biologists I've talked to that the males will start fanning the bed first, then the female will come in and she'll fan it all down. She'll lay her eggs and he'll come back in and fertilize them.
so they'll come off the main part of the river here, come up into these little creeks and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's what we're targeting here is the pre-spawn fish. A little bit further up the creek, they'll be bedding. Generally, I try to leave the fish that are on the beds alone. The state of Pennsylvania, as far as I know, doesn't stock smallmouth bass, so I want their eggs to hatch and have healthy spawn.
Yeah, I personally agree with that. Just stay off the beds and you can catch plenty of fish.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Catch these fish that are in here transitioning.
Where'd that fish come from?
He was right here in the rocks, right in front of us. We've moved out onto the main river, the Susquehanna now. A lot of times, this kind of smallmouth fishing, it's run and gun. You got to move from hole to hole, you got to find the fish, and pretty much got to hunt them down. What we have here is another series of ledges. We got rocks. You can see the eddies, the pockets up in here. This is what we're going to be fishing.
And the fish will be on the inside of those eddies, right? Waiting for a bait fish to...
The active fish will be more right on the current line. What a smallmouth likes to do, he'll sit where there's no current, facing out into the current, and he's waiting for the river to bring him something to eat. He's waiting for crayfish to come bouncing down the rocks or a bait fish to swim by, and he'll jut out and grab it.
You know, let's take a second to talk about that. A lot of guys fish, they drift down with the current.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you're still going to catch fish, granted. But the best way is to actually go up against the current and bring your bait down naturally with the current itself. That's why we had mentioned your trolling motor, you have what,
109-pound thrust.
109-pound thrust. That's really important, especially like on these shallow rivers. The current is quite swift.
Oh yeah.
And to hold in these positions, you do really need a trolling motor with some guts. And at 109 pounds, it'll really hold in that. I know you had mentioned that it's easy for you when you have your clients for them to fish these spots because
well, as you're drifting down, you might only get 2 casts at a hole as you're going past it. If you're working your way up against the current, you can make 50 casts.
Exactly, and that's really important to pick everything apart.
You can pick it apart, yes. All right, that's a pretty good one.
Oh, good.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a nice fish. Yeah, real pretty fish. Now, where did he come from, Steve?
see the pile of brush right up there, right behind that tree? He was right behind it.
Right on that back of it again.
Yep. He was sitting right out of the current, and I threw it right about where you just now threw. He was sitting right behind that little pile of brush right there. He's sitting out of the current. He's facing into the current. I dropped my spinnerbait right on the current line in front of him. He darted out and grabbed it.
Again, that's important to bring that bait down with the current versus...
That's the natural presentation. That's what the fish are looking for. You don't want to fish backwards against the current.
No, because they're not looking that way.
That's right.
They're looking for something to come down in front of them. Behind us, we have a riff coming here. How do you fish those riffs coming down? Because you know, like it's a series of steps that the river is. How would you fish a riff like that?
Generally, I look for the foam, the air bubbles that form on the surface of the water. You can see where they're stalling behind rocks in the eddies. You find those pockets, and those pockets are going to hold fish. As I was saying before about the log jams and things like that, they're going to try and stay out of the current, and they're going to face into the current.
But it's important to look at those when you come across these riffs, to find those little pockets, because you know that the fish are going to be laying in those little pockets all across this whole ledge.
That's right. Another important thing about reading the ledges like that is knowing what they look like coming downriver versus what they look like going upriver. When you're running in the boat, you don't want to hit those either. A lot of those rocks are only a few inches under the surface. You need to find the V's of water that are coming down between the rocks.
And that's the important part. That's where you want to put your boat, is in that V.
That's right.
Not where it's bubbling.
That's right.
That's important because you will stop if you hit those rocks.
Yeah. We talked about always running against the current, working your way upriver. Sometimes I will let the boat drift backwards like this, but notice I am keeping the boat facing up current so I can fight the current and control the boat. That's
really important because if you're going down this way, it actually is quite hard to control a boat with the trolling motor going with the current. It's actually a lot easier, even in the wind too, to go up against the wind. Yeah. But actually what we're doing also is that we're throwing our baits upstream and bringing them down, so the bait is actually still going the natural way.
That's right.
So a lot of times if you don't have a trolling motor that's 103 pounds, you can still get that same effect by just tapping it and slowing yourself down, but still bringing those baits down along the current.
Controlling your drift, yes.
Steve, we're here with the tackle box section of the show. On the Susquehanna, tubes are probably the king of baits.
Number one bait.
Yeah. You fish it probably, what, 90% of the year? Is that
yes, easily 90%.
Now, you got probably 4 basic colors. You know, if it's not a white spinnerbait, it's a white spinnerbait. But in tubes, you got this tube here. What do we have here?
That's a variation of green pumpkin. That's green pumpkin with a slight, very small, fine orange flake or copper flake.
And that's the one you basically throw most of the time?
Yes. Yeah. That or just straight green pumpkin. Green pumpkin will have black flake in it.
Then other variations, when would you use that?
June bug, I use that primarily in the winter and early in the spring. The crayfish, when the water is cold, are a darker color, and that more closely resembles a wintertime crayfish that would find its way out from under the rocks.
So then you'll fish this in the colder water. What temperatures? High 50s, that kind of stuff?
At anywhere from 38 degrees up to the mid 60s.
Okay, and now
again, this is a green pumpkin. This one has purple and red flake in it. I've seen days where it didn't matter what the bait was, it had to have a particular color in it that they were looking for. So I carry probably 6 different green pumpkin with different color flake in them.
And now, again here?
That color is just, it's more natural. I'll use those when the water is very clear or on sunny days.
This is again, it imitates a crayfish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Throw in these, your weight. That's a quarter ounce?
That's an 1/8 ounce jig head. I use primarily 1/8 and 1/4 ounce. I'll use a 1/4 ounce on windier days when you're just not able to throw against the wind because of the light weight. And I always use the kind with the weed guard. And calling it a weed guard is really incorrect because it won't keep the bait from getting hung up in the weeds, but it keeps the hook point turned away from the rocks as it's bumping along on the bottom.
And that's really important to mention, that you're basically bouncing these tubes off of that bottom just ever so slightly to give it that motion.
Yep.
But let's face it, you go through a whole lot.
Oh yeah.
Of these. As a matter of fact, you mentioned that this jig here is made locally right in here, right?
Yeah, right here at Riverfront Campground.
And this weed guard, what is it? Is metal or is it plastic?
It's metal. It's metal. It's stainless.
Again, it's not really just to keep everything away. It's just to keep that hook.
It's to keep the hook point turned away from the rocks so you don't barb the hook.
Go to a little bait right here. What's this one?
That's a man's baby 1-. That's in a natural shad pattern.
Yeah, that's important because the water we have here is anywhere from an inch to, we had what maybe 4 feet today.
Yeah.
But that's about it. So you don't want a real deep diving crankbait.
No. I will throw crankbaits that dive about 4 foot.
This color here, though, it's a natural shadwood. What other colors would you throw with this?
Chartreuse. Also the crankbait patterns in red and brown.
Today we had pretty good luck with the spinner baits.
Yeah.
This is your favorite bait right here?
Yeah, that's a glamour shad. That's a 1/2 ounce, and that's in a Tennessee shad pattern.
And you like the willow leaf baits?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I see now. I always have my combination just the opposite of this. I like the copper here and the silver there. Now you mentioned that this is a heavy bait. It's a 1/2 ounce bait. Why do you want such a heavy bait?
I want it to run right along the bottom. The way I like to put it, if I'm not beating the paint off of it, it's not running where I want it to be. I want it to run right down through the rocks, because that's where the bass will be most of the time. They'll be down in the rocks.
And it's easy, obviously with a 1/2 ounce you can really get it out there. And you mentioned being in the rocks, but it's important to feel that bait going through there, because that's the ticket where you're going to be able to move. If you had a lighter bait like a 1/4 ounce, you won't be able to feel it.
That's right.
And especially, it's surprising the amount of current that we have out there. It's pretty strong.
Yes, it is.
And so
there's a lot of water moving down this river.
And so you really do need to keep in contact with your bait. This one here,
that's a booyah.
And the red hook now, what's the story with the bleeding bait stuff?
Actually, I see that it makes a difference more with largemouth than with smallmouth. Smallmouth, I think, they see the entire bait. They don't look at the individual colors. A largemouth will look for the red.
And you have and this is what
that's a Tennessee shad.
Tennessee shad in there with a little bit of.
This is just booyah's version of it.
Just a little bit of red. And I do have to mention that, like you said, that if it's not scuffed up, you ain't hitting it
You're not.
right way.
Right.
We got the tackle, but we couldn't get to the tackle into the water without this boat here.
The jet boat.
Tell us a little bit about the motor.
It's an EVINRUDE E-TEC.
What's that mean?
Well, it's the latest and greatest on the market. Most of the carbureted 2-stroke motors are done this year. They don't pass 2006 EPA standards.
Right, that's the important thing.
These motors do. They not only pass 2006, they pass 2008. They're all computerized.
Easy start.
Starts, they do everything themselves. The computer even takes care of the break-in period. You run it the way you're always going to run it, right out of the box. The computer takes care of everything.
Now, that's a 90 horse, but what's it at the jet?
There's a 30% power loss going through one of these outboard jet units. So this one, it's 90 at the power head, it's 65 horsepower at the jet.
And you have hydraulic lift on that too, right?
Yeah, it has hydraulic trim and tilt.
And the boat stick steers. I think it's a must. Now you can get jet boats without stick steer.
Yeah.
But why do you prefer the stick steer?
Well, I prefer being in the front of the boat so I can see the obstructions in the water. You may have noticed during the day today me zigzagging through ledges. That's so we're not going to hit anything.
Yeah, I thought it was always important to see what's in front of you because a lot of guys have they're driving back here.
Right.
And I think it puts the weight to the back of the boat also. It doesn't get it up on plane.
Yeah, a jet boat, you want it to sit flat on top of the water when it's on plane. You want to get as high off the bottom as you possibly can, all aspects of the boat. Another advantage to having the stick and driving from the very front, when I pull into one of those eddies, I'm right at the trolling motor. As soon as I shut off the gas motor, I drop the trolling motor, I'm already fighting the current. If you have to get out from behind a console in the back of the boat, by the time you get to the trolling motor, you've washed back out of the eddy.
So it saves time and gets you right into the fishing.
Yes, more efficient.
And one more thing I have to mention again, you need a darn good trolling motor up here. And you're running a MotorGuide up there with what,
109 pound thrust, yes.
You know, I've been on the water a long time and it has changed dramatically the amount of thrust we can get out of a trolling motor. When we started out with like 12-pound thrust, and you need what? It's a 36 volt, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And that'll really hold you in the current and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
That's really important.
And I can do it all day long without running the batteries down.
And that's another aspect of the new trolling motors.
Yeah.
Steve, I want to thank you, and that's the tackle box.
Here's one.
All right, Steve. On that spinnerbait.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I want to thank you a whole lot for taking us up here fishing. Got to go to our website, Delaware Valley Outdoors, get more information about coming up here on the Susquehanna, the Juniata, and Sherman's Creek in here.
That's right.
Go to our website, Delaware Valley Outdoors, for all that information. Steve, I want to thank you again. Great time. Hey, I'm Bob Murray. I'll see you on the water. All right, let's go get some more of them dogs.
All right.